In this video, we're going to talk about solving literal equations. A literal equation is just a fancy word for formula. And this is an equation that contains more than one variable. So literal equations are formulas that contain more than one variable. We cannot truly solve literal equations, but we can rewrite them and solve for a different variable using the properties that we already know. So for example, if I have 3x plus y equals 10 and I want to solve that for y, that means I want to isolate y. And I like to highlight or circle the variable that I'm solving for, and in this case it's y. So in order to get y by itself, I'm going to use the subtraction property of equality, and I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. So when I do that, I'm left with y is equal to negative 3x plus 10. Right, in example number 2, I have a equals b times c, and I want to solve that for b. So I'm going to highlight b, and that helps me remember which variable I'm solving for. So in order to solve for b, I'm going to need to use the division property of equality and divide both sides by c. So that gives me a over c is equal to b, and the symmetric property says I can write that as b equals a over c. Okay. Last example here, that's just not a word problem. I'm solving this equation for the variable t. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to move anything that's added or subtracted to that variable. So the 3w, I'm going to need to use subtraction property of equality to subtract 3w from both sides. So that gives me x minus 3w is equal to 2t. And then I want to get t alone, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So I have x minus 3w divided by 2 is equal to t. Funny looking t, sorry about that. And then I'm going to use my symmetric property to write t first. So t is equal to x minus 3w divided by 2 would be my final answer. Right. Last example, the perimeter of a rectangle is p equals 2w plus 2l, where w is the width of the rectangle and l is the length of the rectangle. Solve the perimeter formula for the width of the rectangle. So I have perimeter is equal to 2w plus 2l. I want to solve for the width of the rectangle, so I know that's w, so I know I'm solving this for w. So in order to solve that for w, the first thing I'm going to need to do is to subtract 2l from both sides, so I have to get anything that's added or subtracted out of the way. So I have p minus 2l is equal to 2w. And then, in order to get w by itself, I'm going to have to use division property of equality. And I'm going to need to divide both sides by 2. So I end up with p minus 2l over 2 is equal to w, or again with that symmetric property, w is equal to p minus 2l over 2.